The rain was relentless that evening, streaking the windows of the small, cozy cafe with silver lines that blurred the city lights outside. Emma, the cafe's owner, wiped her hands on her apron and glanced around the empty tables, her heart heavy with a mix of exhaustion and quiet despair. Today would be her last day. After years of pouring her soul into the cafe, after countless early mornings and late nights filled with the scent of freshly baked bread and roasted coffee, the bills had piled too high, and the weight of debt had finally broken her resolve. She wasn't just closing a business, she was closing a chapter of her life that she had nurtured with hope, laughter, and occasional tears. As she switched off the neon sign that had welcomed countless strangers and regulars alike, Emma sighed and leaned against the counter, staring out at the darkening street. Every sound outside, the patter of rain, the distant honk of a car, the muted laughter of people passing by, felt like a reminder of the life she was about to leave behind. She felt invisible, a tiny figure in a world that seemed to move without noticing her struggles. She had always believed in kindness, in helping others feel at home, yet somehow, life had never offered her the same comfort. It was at that moment, just as she was about to pull the blinds and turn the key in the lock for the last time, that the bell above the door jingled. She froze, startled. No one ever came in at this hour, not when the city streets were wet and empty. And yet, there he was, a man in a tailored coat, slightly disheveled from the rain, with tired eyes that hinted at a life spent carrying invisible burdens. He smiled faintly, a warmth in his gaze that made Emma's chest tighten. He was a stranger, yet something about him felt familiar, almost like a promise. "I know you're about to close," he said, his voice low but kind, carrying the weight of unspoken stories, "but may I have one last coffee?" Emma blinked, unsure whether to feel annoyed at the intrusion or moved by the simple request. There was something about his presence that seemed to pause the very air of the cafe, as if the world outside had melted away into the warm glow of the lamps inside. She nodded silently, preparing the coffee with trembling hands, feeling a strange pull in her chest. And as she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed lightly, sending a shockwave of unspoken connection between them. Sparkling heart, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the magic of unexpected encounters, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Stars of Kindness, let's celebrate stories that touch the heart. Sparkling heart. As he sat down at a corner table, Emma noticed the small photograph peeking out from his wallet. A little boy, perhaps 6 or 7, smiling with the kind of joy that made her stomach ache with empathy. She sensed immediately that this man carried more than just loneliness, he carried responsibility, worry, and love all intertwined in a way she couldn't yet fully understand. He didn't speak much, simply took his first sip, closed his eyes, and seemed to let the warmth seep into his bones. Emma watched him, her heart softening. It wasn't just a cup of coffee he wanted, it was a moment of reprieve, a chance to breathe. And in that quiet, as rain tapped against the window, something inside her stirred. The pain she had been carrying, the fear of letting go of her dream, began to feel a little lighter. Perhaps, she thought, sometimes life gives you a sign just when you're ready to give up. The minutes stretched into a delicate silence, punctuated only by the hum of the coffee machine and the gentle patter of rain. Emma wiped the counter absently, stealing glances at the man who sat lost in thought. She imagined his mornings, his routine, the weight of single parenthood pressing on his shoulders. Something about the sorrow etched in his eyes reminded her of herself, of the battles she had faced alone, the moments she had stayed awake wondering if she would ever be seen or heard. Curiosity finally nudged her to approach. She asked softly how his day had been. He paused, then looked at her with a faint, weary smile, revealing the exhaustion and hope coexisting in his gaze. "It's been long," he admitted, his voice betraying more than he said. "I didn't think I'd get a moment like this." Emma felt a pang in her chest. How often had she craved such a moment herself? How often had life demanded more than she felt capable of giving? And then he shared a piece of his world, the way single fathers navigated a life that required them to be both protector and nurturer, provider and friend, all while hiding their own fears and heartbreaks. He spoke of sleepless nights, of tears shed silently in the dark, of trying to offer joy to a child while grappling with the uncertainty of the future. Emma listened, her own pain mirrored in his words, and something in her cracked open, the part that had forgotten how to hope, the part that believed she was too small in a world too vast. As the evening wore on, they exchanged stories of loss and dreams deferred. He laughed softly at the memory of his child's mischievous antics. She smiled through her tears, recalling the first time she had baked a pastry that someone had called perfect. There was no need to pretend, no need to hide, just two human beings connecting in the quiet of a closing cafe. The world outside could wait. Inside, the air was thick with something rare, something fragile yet undeniable. She hadn't noticed the hours slipping by until he finally glanced at his watch, and she realized that the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the city lights. It was a moment suspended in time, a pause from their respective storms. He stood, thanked her for the coffee, and paused before leaving. "I'll come back," he said quietly. "I don't want this to be the last time." His words lingered in the air long after he left, wrapping around her heart like a warm blanket. For the first time in a long while, Emma felt the stirrings of possibility. Maybe closing the cafe wasn't the end, maybe it was the beginning of something she hadn't yet dared to imagine. And somewhere in the quiet corners of her heart, she felt a flicker of hope. A recognition that kindness, even in small gestures, could change lives, could mend broken hearts. The following days were different. Emma found herself replaying the encounter in her mind, the way the man's quiet presence had touched her, how the weight she had carried alone had felt a little lighter when shared. And then, something extraordinary happened. He returned, not just for another coffee, but with a small gesture of goodwill. An invitation to collaborate, to bring a spark of life back into her cafe that had always been more than bricks and mortar. He understood responsibility, struggle, and love, and he offered not just kindness, but a partnership, a vision that Emma hadn't known she needed. Over the weeks, Emma noticed the change in herself. She laughed more, breathed easier, and began to see the beauty in the ordinary again. Her cafe, once a symbol of impending failure, became a beacon of hope. Local families returned, drawn not only by the smell of freshly baked treats but by the warmth that now radiated from every corner. And as for the lonely CEO's single dad, he found in Emma not just a friend, but someone who understood the weight of his love and the depths of his sacrifices. It wasn't an instant fairy tale. There were challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. But each obstacle was met with patience, with empathy, with the willingness to see the world through the other's eyes. And in those moments, Emma realized something profound. Kindness was not a weakness, and second chances were not mere luck, they were courage in action. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the cafe's small terrace, her heart swelled with gratitude. The rain had returned, but this time it felt cleansing rather than suffocating, washing away the years of fear and loneliness. And when he glanced at her, his hand brushing against hers, she saw reflected in his eyes the journey they had shared. The healing, the hope, the love that had blossomed unexpectedly in the quiet moments of a closing cafe. Emma smiled, knowing that life had a way of bringing the right people at the right time. That one last coffee had not only been a chance encounter, it had been the start of everything she hadn't dared dream for herself. And she hoped, with all her heart, that the world would continue to show its hidden miracles to those willing to see, willing to hope, and willing to be kind. Sparkling heart, if this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tell us in the comments how a small act of kindness changed your life. Let's spread hope together. Sparkling heart.